Hambini fans, and welcome to Hambini's predictions for 2024. Oh fuck, is the pen working? By Hambini, aged 5. Better just check that pen is working. We always check the pen is working. Right, let me just go through this. So last year I did a similar video, which was my predictions for 2023. Let me just go over those predictions right now. The first thing I said was I thought that press fit, B Bright, BB30, all those kind of bottom brackets were going to go out of fashion. And I presented a graph. Now, what happens is I have a few bike shops, a few big bike shops where I supply bottom brackets to. So I asked them to sort of count up how many threaded and how many press fit bottom brackets that they've sold. And you can quite clearly see, I mean, the grey one is the threaded. So it was fairly low in 2016 and it maxed out in 2020. And as a proportion, it's increased. But I guess the big thing is, look at the decline in the number of bikes that's been sold. If you forget the press fit or the threaded, just look at that. That is quite telling. And this is it over here as a proportion. So the orange is press fit and the grey is threaded. So it's fairly, I think it's going to level out at some point, but it's sort of 55, 60% threaded and then 30% press fit. That brings me on to the next one, which is the market correction. So you've seen the drop in bottom brackets. This are some of the scalps that have happened this year. So we've had a Wiggle CRC, Signa in Germany. They owned quite a few brands. I think they also owned Sportcheck. So if you're in Germany, do let me know. Raleigh and Lapierre look a bit problematic. And there's been loads of other regional distributors, bike shops, accessory shops, all those smallish boutique brands that they've gone under. Now I did think there was going to be a reset in group set land, and I thought these two brands, L2 and Sensor, would make more inroads than they have. I think in the latter part of this year, L2's made quite a big move with a gravel group set. But then obviously we've had Shimano, which kind of screwed it up completely. And this was a prediction I did get right. So I thought there was going to be a high risk of Shimano getting sued over their cranks. Just to give you a quick update on that. So I'm named in court documents for the plaintiffs. There's 2 actions that were happening and I think they've been amalgamated into one. Here's a list of the authorities that are investigating. So obviously you know the USA, the UK, Germany, Australia, Singapore, South Africa. So these two, the ones in bold, they've been in contact. So we'll see how that one progresses. I've also had various solicitors, lawyers that want to use some of my stuff as evidence. And this one, which I thought was quite interesting, which was a TV company, I guess along the same lines of Gwyneth Paltrow versus the skiing man. They probably want to do a documentary on Shimano. I think Shimano will probably settle before getting up in front of a judge. But I mean, they've got a bit of liability here because, yeah, you've got the judge in the USA, but you've got some other highly developed industrial nations there where they could be in a fair bit of bother. Now, the predictions for 2024. The first one, and I can see this already happening, I guess to a large extent, it depends on where you live because it depends on the legality of these things. But in the UK, there is a huge shift towards these e-scooters. So people who were commuting on e-bikes and just bikes as a whole are moving to these. I've got one, and to be honest, since I got it, my life, the way I run it has changed quite considerably. So, you know, if I'm going somewhere, I go and park the car sort of out of town and then just ride the e-scooter in. Now, they are banned in many countries, but I mean, in Holland, you don't really see them. In the UK, everyone's got one, or loads of people have got them, but they're not legal, and the police don't enforce it. And then in Germany, you need insurance and various other bits. So it's not harmonised across the world, but I think that's coming. And this is, I think, a trend that's been happening for the past 18 months. So AERO, I think, is dead. So the road AERO bike, I think that is dying. And gravel is taking off. I mean, me personally, when I do use a bike, I use a gravel bike because it's just a very easy way of going everywhere without really having to worry too much about potholes, curbs, riding on the pavement, all these other yobbish things that I do. So I think that's the case for it. And you can also have this kind of bike in winter and not need to worry about, getting it mucky and dirty and stuff. It's just a one bike fits all. I think these Chinese wheel companies will be spec'd on new bikes. I think, I'm going to pick an example, but I was going to say Specialized, but it's a poor example. But I think some of the likes of like Canyon, maybe, I think they will be starting to move towards these brands for their wheels, because these brands now, so Magine, Farsports, Windspace, Elite and 9 Velo, they are at a point now where I think they've gained market acceptance. I mean, some of these have got a bit more high profile than others. Obviously Windspace is well known, and Magine not so much in wheel land, but as a brand Magine is well known, especially at Eurobike. I think it's inevitable that you're going to get some bikes now with these wheels. In terms of quality and stuff like that, I think all of these are up there, but this one in particular, the 9 Velo hub, that is probably, one of the best things I've seen this year. So you can click on the review for that. Now, last year, and I guess this year, I said the rise of the one-man YouTuber channel was coming. So I've got 3 people here. So we've got Ben Delaney, Dave Arthur, and Luke from Trace Velo. I think the one-man YouTuber channel type thing is dead for newcomers. I think if you're already established, then I think you're fine. And even though I might criticise Dave Arthur for his antics as a journalist, in terms of what he reviews and whether it's actually the truth, as a business person and as he runs his channel, I've got to take my hat off to him. I think he's done a very good job, in fact an excellent job. So he's grown that channel really well, and for all my differences, I'm not gonna deny him that I respect him for that. This one, Trace Velo, I hope he does well. I really hope he does well, but I think the market for cheapskate Chinese stuff will max out at some point. Whether that's now or in 18 months, 2 years, I don't really know. But the difficulty that he may have is that Chinese stuff may become so mainstream that the novelty of AliExpress disappears. And then Ben Delaney, I think he's, because of his industry connections and stuff like that, I think he will do well. One thing I have noticed towards the latter end of this year is, GCN and all of these other cycling media companies, GCN Plus is dead. Last year I said GCN was going to tank, and I thought they were going to push GCN Plus to get more subscribers, but they didn't. They just shit-canned it. So we've ended up with GCN, I'm not even sure if they've sold it, but whatever. The GCN's moved towards a lot more written content on their website, and they never had that before. It was just purely video. And then I'd give these guys a mention because I tune in every week to listen to Chris and Jesse on their talk show. It's called the Nero Show. I think they've done a really good job with that because they've got the right personalities and the right mentality to go on there. So obviously Chris is very much road, and Jesse just sort of has the persona to come back off him. So I think they make a good couple. This sort of thing, so Francis Cade has also got one. It's kind of like the podcast thing. I think if you get it right, it'll do well. So I think this one will do well. Now, Francis Cade's one, I don't think is quite as good. I'm not quite sure why, but I would say this one sort of like hits the nail on the head a bit more. I think I prefer the format of this one. That's just me and my opinion. And then a couple of other things. This is a bit of a nasty one. So obviously a lot of people know that I do insurance claims for various people. So in the UK, the bike negligence claims have increased dramatically, and I imagine it's probably the same in the States, and probably maybe Europe hasn't caught on quite yet. But that's mainly because people are so aware of it that crap workmanship, crap quality, and it's so easy to prove. So if you go and, let's say someone buys a bike frame, and then I'm using this as an example where I've twisted some of the facts. Well, I've not twisted some of the facts. I've changed some of the facts. Comes along, and then let's say his bottom bracket falls out. And then he hurts himself because the bottom bracket falls out. So he falls on the floor, blah, 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 blah. Has an injury. As soon as you have an injury, the level of claim goes like through the roof. It's just a different world. And then the no win, no fee comes in. They send the bike in, I measure it and say, look, this is the size it should be. And then they almost always settle. So that's one end of it. The one that's really coming in now is bike shops and negligence. Now, I'm a member of a few of the cycling bike shop Facebook groups for various territories. So I've got the UK and the USA and Australia. But in there, you can quite clearly see the negligence claims that are developing, because the mentality of the court system and the legal system, they're moving towards treating the bike like a car and expect the same level of qualifications and procedures and checks. So one thing that I can't even believe this is going to happen is, I think that balancing your wheels will at some point in the next stage become, I wouldn't say it's not going to become the law, but it will become like an expectation. I mean, on your car, it's not the law to balance your wheels, but it's an expectation. And I think that will become the same thing, as an example, on a bike. But yeah, that's mainly because of the value of the bike. I mean, it's like 15 grand, 16 grand. You can get a really nice car for that much. So that's where we go. Right. That is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to smash that like button. If you didn't, go screw yourself. And as always, keep banging your hairdresser.